We're talking this morning about the Turkish crime boss jailed for heroin offences. He's been allowed to remain in the UK on human rights grounds. Well, Tony Smith is the former head of the UK Border Force. Tony, I mean, this story is just farcical, isn't it? And we see it so often. We see these people talking about a right to a family life. We see them talking about, oh, we'll be persecuted if we go back to Turkey. Factually, this guy's been back to Turkey at least 7 or 8 times that we know of. And we know that he cheated on his wife. And, you know, I'm not saying it's standing in moral judgment of people who cheat on their wife. It's not a good thing. I wouldn't recommend it. But at the same time, he doesn't care about a family life if he's doing that. Yet we're locked in to the European Convention on Human Rights. We have the government recommending one thing, the Home Office saying he's not conducive to the public good. Yeah, we can't get rid of him.
Yeah, morning, Pete. I mean,
Morning.
I think I haven't read this judgment in full. I've only read the reports about the judgment, so I couldn't sort of give you the chapter and verse about what's happened. It does look in his early days over here. He was sent back a couple of times, actually, by us. Managed to get back in at some point.
So
and
we actually did send him back. He keeps coming back to supply his heroin to various people.
I think the point listeners perhaps to get across is that the Home Office have tried to deport this bloke a number of times, but all of the decisions have been as a result of appeal determinations.
Yeah.
The Home Office, when he came out of prison, the Home said, right, that's it, you're going back now, you know, served, don't notice of intention to deport, get served on him before he finishes his sentence, and then he appeals. He wins his appeal at first tribunal. The Home Office appeal against that decision to the upper tribunal, and the upper tribunal upheld the original appeal. So what is happening, and I think that's where we need more data really, very significant number of these cases are being granted by the appeals system, by the second level tribunals, not by the department, not by officials who are trying their best to deport people, but are running into legal barriers. And that comes back to your point, Peter, about, you know, the European Court of Human Rights and a number of judgments. And what I'd really like to see is more data, because, you know, there is going to be a data battle now going on between this government and the last one about who's doing more.
Yes.
It's not about the volume. I mean, it's all about volumes, Peter. We want to know how many have been granted, don't we? We want to know how many people have been granted. Foreign national criminals have been granted.
And there must be loads of information there. There must be lots of information about how many appeals have been made. You know, people who've been deported a number of times who keep coming back. And this is the problem. We can't keep them out of the country. Surely if someone's deported, you can say, right, you're not welcome in this country. How can they get back in?
Well, so, I mean, I think you're right. There are people that are getting back in, but we would know, you know, assuming we can encounter, we will know whether they were at a port of entry or on a small boat. We will take their fingerprints. They will have been fingerprinted previously. They will come up as a previous deportation order, and they could well be convicted for another offence. But the point is, Peter, that actually we can only remove people if it's lawful to do so. No matter how many times they come back. And, you know, we are constantly being thwarted by judgments, which is judicial overreach, really, by the European Convention on Human Rights. European court judges have made it really, really difficult. Now, so the big question I guess you should be asking people, Pete, as well as me, is that like what are the government going to do about this?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
No, we know we're in a mess. We can all look back and say what a mess the last lot made of this, and what we're going to. But there is no clear. I haven't seen any clear statement from government about what are they going to do with the increasing, you know, extent to which human rights legislation is pervading immigration enforcement, because immigration enforcement officers are hugely frustrated by this. Home Office caseworkers are frustrated by this, but they cannot put the Home Secretary in contempt of court. If the court decides someone should be allowed to stay, unless we can win an appeal right the way up to the House of Lords, that person gets to stay. I would really like to know, what are the government going to do about this? I think there should be a root and branch review into our policy with regarding the balance to the communities people have been welcomed as foreign nationals as opposed to their personal individual.
Well, I totally agree with you, but what's going to happen is they'll say the Human Rights Act would have to be repealed. I mean, I'm very happy with it being repealed. I'm very happy with this idea of a British Bill of Rights, which is something the Conservatives said they would think about and would do for 14 years and never did. And I just cannot see the circumstances in which Labour would repeal the Human Rights Act. I can't see that working politically, Tony, for them, even though I think it's the right thing to do.
No, I agree with you, Peter. I think that's right. We've got a Labour government for the next 4 years. The left of that party are very much pro-immigration and pro-human rights, actually, and would not really countenance or vote for any amending of human rights legislation as it stands. We are where we are. And you're right. Abolishing the Human Rights Act is really tricky, Peter, because there are other areas of law. You know, we talk about the Good Friday Agreement, for example. Well, a lot of that based upon fundamental human rights. So we do need something about human rights, but people need to understand that we've lost the balance, I think.
Yep.
Between the needs and the anger of communities coming on your show to say, why is it this happening? The answer is it's because of the legal framework we've got. And the only people that can change the legal framework we've got ultimately is the elected government.
Yeah, the legislators. Tony, thanks for your thoughts on that. Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force. He's right, isn't he, Philip? Philip Ingram with me all morning here. And I mean, unfortunately, what the courts say has to be obeyed. The rule of law obviously is important, but the law is nonsense.
Well, the law's nonsense, but is it the law itself, or is it the interpretation of the law that the judges put on it?
Well, the Human Rights Act says that essentially the decisions of the European Court have to be brought into our way of doing things, which is not the case in other countries.
Well, then it's easy for us to change it, because the government is in a position now with a huge majority to change that law and bring an amendment in like that.
They're just not going to have the political will, though, are they? You cannot see, human rights defender, human rights lawyer Keir Starmer saying, actually, we're going to repeal the Human Rights Act. Like, that's just not going to happen, is it? No, we're just going to see more of these stories. We're going to see more of this nonsense happening and more of this outrage, and rightly so. And it could, as you say, very quickly be changed.
Well, it very easy to change, and the trouble is, I don't think Keir Starmer quite gets the feeling that there is across the country and the potential implications that there are for it. We saw a little bit of that in Southport, and that was a warning. What he hasn't dealt with are the symptoms that were behind all of that. Yes, he dealt with the rioters very, very quickly indeed, but he needs to deal with the symptoms, and this all relates to the symptoms that were behind those riots.